Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs. Divisional champs. NFC champs. And world champs.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to a victory green hour as the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Green Bay Packers 40-33 in an unexpectedly high scoring game in which the Philadelphia Eagles ran for 363 yards, second most in franchise history, if I'm not mistaken. And Jalen Hurts ran for 157 yards, which is most in franchise history for a quarterback. And he was only 21 yards shy of Justin Fields' regular season record of 178 yards and 24 yards shy of Colin Kaepernick's NFL record for a quarterback of 181, which he did in a playoff game some time ago. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, they got the win. It wasn't pretty. Well, defensively and special teams-wise, it wasn't pretty, but they're 10-1. And with 6 games to go, if we can figure it out with all the injuries that we have piling up right now, they could have home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right on. Like, the one thing that when we left the last episode, which you were not on, but that's okay, I'll catch you up to speed. The one thing that me and Chris have wanted to see is, can Jalen Hurts hang with the big boys when it matters the most? And I get it. I know your argument, LJ. It was on the ground, and you can't always win on the ground. I get it. But the point is, when we wanted him to hang in there and the scoring was high, after we just watched them get one more point than Indianapolis to get that W, he came out and he put up 40 points against a team that put up 33. Granted, we were up, and probably the 33 easily could have been just 20, 26. But at the end of the day, he ended up being able to help put up 40 points. Obviously, Miles Sanders was a major part of that, but we can't discount Jalen Hurts with 2 passing touchdowns as well. And he made some incredible plays to get us there. Now, when push comes to shove against a team like Buffalo or Kansas City, I really want to see that, but we can only play what's in front of us. And this was definitely one of Jalen Hurts' more impressive wins in my mind this season, and one of the more impressive wins by Shane Steichen, because their play calling over the last couple games was brutal. And this one, he kept it simple, he kept it easy, and most of all, he knew he was facing a team that was really bad against the run, and he faced them head on against the run, which was awesome to see that they didn't waver from that, because I was getting nervous heading into that game that Steichen would waver and kind of give us a bit of a taste of what we saw in the past 2 games, which was extremely frustrating. And we'll get into it later, but the Chauncey Gardner Johnson injury, I get it. Reed Blankenship had himself a game. I am concerned. Very much so.
So I actually want to start with that, because I get Reed Blankenship had an interception. He made a lot of really, like, he was hitting. He reminded me of Andrew Sendejo a little bit. He was like a missile out there. He also had that one bad play on Christian Watson's long touchdown pass. But that was him coming into the game. Now there's a little bit of tape on him. Teams can actually design plays to go after him. Look, he was undrafted, and whatnot. And look, he's probably a good special teams guy, which I don't know who on this team is a good special teams guy with the way the special teams is playing. But the Eagles definitely have to figure. They are very thin at the safety position. I mean, Kevon Wallace came in for a couple of plays when Blankenship got dinged up a little bit. He actually made a couple of good plays too, but still, we've talked about it in the past. Marcus Epps is better with Gardner Johnson out there. We don't know how he's going to be with Blankenship out there. There are a couple of names. Jonathan Abrams just got released by the Packers from their practice squad. Now, look, he's not great. His career kind of went down a little bit after getting drafted. I believe he was
as with any Raiders first rounder.
Yeah, he was the first rounder by the Raiders. I think 12th overall or something like that. But I think he's better than Kevon Wallace and could be better than Blankenship. There's been a lot of talk of maybe Malcolm Jenkins. Now, I don't know how well that will go. While he may be in shape, you're not in football shape, and it's different.
And it's different than defensive linemen.
Defensive or offensive.
Exactly.
Lineman.
That's what I was going to say. It's so different than Linval Joseph and Dominic Kunsu. You let those guys go out there and say, pin your ears back and push those bodies around. There's a lot more strategy to Malcolm Jenkins' game, especially because if he comes back, you're probably wanting to use him as Malcolm Jenkins can be used, which is all over the field. And are you in that good of football shape? I mean, you can't be worse than Kevon Wallace or Andre Chichère, who didn't even make the roster and he's there now, but he was up and down for the longest time. But honestly, like, you can only bring so many guys out of retirement to help you before you actually have to make a run at someone who could be of better substance for you. And a guy like Jonathan Abrams would be, that comes to mind. I like that one, but I get it. Is he going to be that much better? I mean, at this point, you have to say, are they better than Kevon Wallace? Which I don't think is setting a very high bar at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough though, because if there was any good safeties out there that are on a roster, you could scour the practice squads and whatnot. It's just I haven't done that, so I don't know who's out there. And I only mentioned Jonathan Abrams because I saw him get released today. So again, he would be a body. But I mean, you got cut by the Raiders, you got cut by the Packers. So how good can he really be? He wasn't even active in the game on Sunday against the Eagles. But Wally says with CJ Gardner Johnson out for the foreseeable future, it's time to see what Blankenship can do when he plays a full game. There's tape on him now. He has limitations. There's a reason why he wasn't drafted. There's a reason why he really hasn't been on the field. So we know how thin the Eagles are at the safety position. So this is going to be key. Like, how do they...
I was about to say, I hope Chris isn't listening to
I know, he
LJ going on Blankenship, but
he had one.
maybe
he had the interception, and that was like Chris was up here, and then that he had a really bad route and bad play on Christian Watson's touchdown, and it was on both safeties pretty much, and then he came down. So we'll see what happens. And again, against Tennessee, look, they have Treylon Burks. They're going to run the football, so that's kind of, I think that Blankenship could be okay this week because it's not going to be a team that's going to want to throw the ball a lot. They're going to want to run the football, try to keep the Eagles offense off the field. So this could be a game in which Blankenship, he was a missile. He was hitting people hard, so he could be fine this game. But if you're going up against a team that likes to sling it, that's where I'm really worried about Blankenship out there.
Absolutely, and against Derrick Henry, like at that point, you don't have to take him down, but if you can push him back or hold the line with him, that's all that we need. And it feels like Reed Blankenship can be a guy who can do that. He's a heavy hitter. He's better than Kevon Wallace. He always should have been the third safety in my mind. I had Andre Chichère making the roster originally because I thought that he would be really effective on special teams for us, which, I mean, the competition is not very stiff as far as special teams go. Michael Clay needs to go, and there needs to definitely be a focus brought in on some special teamers. I get it. You don't need a plethora of special teamers, but look at Green Bay when they were returning the ball. Like, who was that was Keyshawn Nixon, 34.4 average on kick returns. Boston Scott, 22.8. What a joke. And then you got your focus doesn't have to be that much, but in the 6th and 7th round, don't sit there and say, Patrick Johnson looks like a good pick in this situation. Why not look at a special teamer in that spot?
In the past, the Eagles used to have Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod. They used to have starters out on special teams. They don't I saw Kenny Gainwell out there. They don't have, and I think that's a big difference. The Eagles might have to start, and it'll be tough. Maybe put Marcus Epps out there. And again, it'd be tough because if Marcus Epps gets hurt with Johnson out, that really hurts the back end of the secondary, and not having Avonte Maddox, because Maddox could potentially look. I'm not saying Josiah Scott's playing great. Yes, he had an interception last week against the Packers, but Avonte Maddox could potentially move back to safety in the interim. until Gardner Johnson comes back, if he is going to come back this year. So now we're at that point where the Eagles were staying healthy, but now they're starting to lose. And they're losing important pieces. Obviously, Goddard. Jordan Davis could potentially come back this week. I don't know if he will, but he can. Avonte Maddox is out for a couple more weeks. Now Gardner Johnson. This is where now you're going to have to be smart. It is getting dicey, and you're going to have to be smart because the injuries are coming at positions in which you are very thin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at the end of I think one of the biggest points that you made that people need to understand is we're not throwing shade at Blankenship. Chauncey Gardner Johnson made a lot of the players on this defense better because of what he could do. And one of the most important guys he made better on this defense was Marcus Epps. Can Marcus Epps be as effective and be as good with any other safety plugged in beside him? Reed Blankenship, Kevon Wallace, Andre Chichere, whoever comes up in that spot. Can he be as effective? Because then if you have Marcus Epps being not as effective, and then you got Reed Blankenship, who is a heat-seeking missile, but after that, what else can he do for us? And he showed he made a good... Granted, I think it was a really bad pass also by Aaron Rodgers. It was a pretty floppy pass by Aaron Rodgers. It was just kind of put out there like a layup. But it was a good read. Don't get me wrong. It was an incredible read. It was a good read. It was a bad pass. It was everything you want to see work in the Eagles' favor, and it worked in our favor. But can Marcus Epps be as effective with Blankenship? That's the big question, because we've seen when Chauncey Gardner Johnson goes down, Marcus Epps looks like Marcus Epps, the guy that we wanted to see what he could develop into. Not Marcus Epps, the guy we've seen develop into with Gardner Johnson by his side. So I think you asked a very important question. You made a very important point with that. And I don't think there's enough discussion about it. I get Blankenship's great, or he's really good. He has some elements where he may miss. He has some times where he could be Sendejo-like, where he may take unnecessary penalties based on how he hits. But at the end of the day, I think it's more important about Marcus Epps and how comfortable he is and how effective he can continue to be with whoever is plugged in beside him. But it's a major injury, and we, at this point, I think we can't afford any more injuries. I posted on Twitter, regular recovery time is 6 weeks on this, no surgery. They say this is a no surgery injury. I know a lot of people point to Zach Ertz, super different situation. I don't think you can even comp the situations. If Chauncey Gardner Johnson got this injury in week 16 and the playoffs are 2 weeks out, he'd be back for the playoffs. I don't guarantee he's back before the playoffs. I think he may just take the full time unless things get really ugly. Well, then he might
he's
push
in a contract year. He cannot risk, like, obviously he leads the NFL in interceptions right now, but like, he can't come back less than 100% and risk another injury, because that's going to risk his future contract. But before we get into this Packers game, kind of breaking it down, as always, I want to remind everybody, please follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. Follow the Painted Lines on Twitter and YouTube at the Painted Lines, and follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Edge of Philly Sports or EOP Sports. All right. So as I mentioned, it was a 40-33 win. And the one thing I think in the off season, I always talked about, you can't win a Super Bowl by being a primarily running team. But when you're able to gash a team as bad as they were able to gash the Packers, why stop? Would I have liked to see Jalen Hurts throw for more than 150 yards? Sure. But they ran for 363. So, and again, where the passing game helps, the Packers put up 33 points while the Eagles still ran for 300. So the game was close because the Packers were able to hit big plays and get short field because A.J. Brown fumbled. Our special teams was crap. I can't believe Michael Clay still has a job right now. It was awful. So, again, I don't know what's up with A.J. Brown, and I get it. He was sick all week, but that's 2 fumbles in 2 weeks. He needs to stop with that crap. That needs to stop. He needs to be able to hold on to the football. I know he had a touchdown too, which was nice to see. But we need to, again, the first 8 weeks of the season, the Eagles had 3 turnovers. The last 3 weeks, the Eagles have 7? I think 7 turnovers. So that's not good. That's something that they definitely have to go, because a better team will take advantage of that. The Titans are a better team. Dallas coming up is a better team than the Packers, even though the Packers beat them. So it's going to be interesting. You have to be able to protect the football. And we know the Eagles, I think, are still number one in the league. The Eagles are number one in the league in turnover differential, but you can't always. You have to protect the football. It also, it was weird. I looked at the final stats. I thought the Eagles' defense was bad against the run. They only gave up 104 yards. That was a lot of that was because the Packers were down and didn't get the run because the Packers were averaging, I think, 5 yards a carry. So again, the Eagles' run defense has to pick it up. Jordan Davis coming back within the next week or two will help, but the Eagles have to figure out a way to stop the run. And I don't know what's up with Darius Slay. He hasn't been the Darius Slay as he was the first half of the year. Terry McLaurin had a good game against him. So hopefully, I don't know if Slay's banged up, but hopefully he can start getting back into Slay form. But look, they're 10-1. It's a shame. Like if the playoffs were to start today, all 4 teams in the NFC East would be in the playoffs, which is amazing because the last couple of years we've been called the NFC least. And you think with a 10-1 record that like in a normal year the Eagles would already have the division wrapped up. Obviously they don't. They have a 2-game lead with one more against Dallas. They still have the Giants twice, and I'm still of thought that the Giants are fraudulent. Obviously they're what are they, 7-3 or no 6-7-4?
7-3.
They're 7-4.
7-4.
Yeah, so the Giants are 7-4. They got a couple. Obviously they got us twice. They've already gotten through Dallas. They got Washington this week. That should be a good game. Like that, the loser of the Washington New York game this week could, they'll I think officially be out of division talks. But it's crazy that we're 10-1 and we're not. Obviously there are ways that the Eagles can clinch a playoff berth this week, but they should have already had it in a normal year. But yeah, so I kind of want to get your thoughts on the running game. I know I kind of talked a lot around that, but 363 yards is nothing to sniff at. I don't think that you can run 300 yards against. You can't run for 300 yards against most teams.
Yeah, you can't run for. I was going to say that Serdar. I think he was in the comments on Friday, and he's a Cowboys fan, which we respect. It's fine. Welcome aboard. But to run for 300 yards on any given day, that should not be the bar. First of all, so hopefully you're not setting the bar and expectation at 300. We ran for 136 yards against them. Super ineffective, but we did run the ball 39 times for 3.5 yards per rush against Cowboys in our last meeting, and it was one of the reasons why the time of possession was controlled like it was. So sometimes it's not necessarily. Look at the Washington game against us a couple weeks ago. It's not always about being effective. It can just be about controlling the pace of the game, controlling the time of possession.
And if you can get the third and manageable, that helps, and that's what the Washington was able to do against us. That's what we were able to do against Dallas. But Jalen Hurts going for over 100 yards in the first quarter, did not see that coming. My only question is, are they starting to revert back to last year's offense where it became Jalen one read and go? That's my worry. Because if you brought in A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, does Dallas Goedert mean that much to this offense that you can't throw the football?
It's really starting to look that way.
If that's the case, Dallas Goedert needs to be the one that's about to make $50 million a year, not Jalen Hurts.
100%, I agree. And we talked about it on Friday, how important it seems like Dallas Goedert was. But the worst part was Dallas Goedert's average depth of target is so low because all he does is go for yards after the catch, which granted can open things up down the field when you're ready to pull the trigger on a ball. And it kind of shows in what we've seen in the past weeks that the receivers aren't as open as they used to be. There's a lot of contested catches, there's a lot of him trusting his wide receivers, or after you ran the ball 5 or 6 times, you pull the trigger on a pass play and Green Bay's completely caught off guard, or the team's completely got caught off guard. I'm hoping we're not reverting back to that. And it's a serious question to bring up, that if Dallas Goedert is that important to this offense, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. We saw Grant Calcaterra get a -8 yards depth of target on a catch, and he got back to the line of scrimmage. It was so ugly. And they have to remember at this point, Stoll and Calcaterra are not Dallas Goedert are never going to be Dallas Goedert. So you have to stop thinking that they're going to be something in this offense that is going to be helpful. Stoll is an okay pass blocker. There's a couple plays that he looked really bad on Sunday night. And I know that some people picked him apart for, but generally he's a decent pass blocker. He's way better than Grant Calcaterra, Tyree Jackson in pass blocking. So, but Calcaterra and then Jackson's Jackson at this point. I wish they had kept him on the IR for the rest of the season, because I think he needs that time to develop again and see what he can be. He already was.
I think the Goddard injury kind of forced him back onto the field.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a question. Jim, my co-host on my fantasy football podcast. Well, thanks for dropping in. He says, who needs to step up for the Eagles most in Goddard's absence? I said it on Friday, and I continue to say it. I think it's Quez Watkins. You can't keep forcing it to AJ Brown. You've seen it. They've tried it. The 2 games before this game was them forcing the ball to AJ Brown, and there were some near picks. There's cause for concern with his fumble issues and his ball control at this point. And I get it. He was sick, whatever. This might not be the week to talk about that, but at the end of the day, I think it's got to be Quez Watkins, because he can do what Dallas Goedert could do. Plus, if you really want to scheme him really fun, you can move him down the field with his 4.3 speed extremely well. And that's why I think he's most important.
And I think it's Devontae. Like, Devontae was the number 1 receiver last year in his rookie year, had a really good year, set the rookie receiving record. But they brought in AJ Brown to help him. And when you have 1A and 1B, as the second, quote unquote, second receiver, you're going to mostly go up against second corners, and you have to be able to beat them. So I think it's Devontae that's going to have to step up. And I'm not saying he has to run across the middle of the field and whatnot, but also the Eagles offense, they don't use the seams that much. They need to find a way to start using the seams. I don't care if that's with AJ. I don't care if that's with Quez. I don't care if that's with Devontae or even, the running backs, but they need to start getting back to using the middle of the field. And I know that like Goddard kind of ate in the middle of the field. So that's what somebody's going to have to start taking advantage of that. So I'm going to go Devontae.
And Devontae, he's had some games. He's had some bad drops. He's had some fumbles. His ball security issues definitely could be in question as well. He was targeted 9 times. He went 4 for 50 this week. I just think Quez can offer what Goddard could offer, but at the end of the day, I don't necessarily believe like you have to use Smith and Brown in different ways. Somebody's got to be on the outside. Smith's always obviously the guy on the outside. AJ Brown could offer you that seam work. He could work the middle of the field. He can create the yards after the catch. Hopefully get in healthy, having that touchdown grab after that fumble and stuff. Maybe that type of stuff gets him right for next week, and he'll be in a lot better spot, and he'll get rid of the yips, and he'll definitely have a big game up against, the revenge game. We love the revenge games. So hopefully AJ Brown can get that revenge game this week. And I've been wishing it week in and week out. Gainwell could be used in the seam game. And I think you talked about it last week as well on the reaction episode to the Colts game, or it might have been the preview show to the Colts game, where you talked about he could be used out of the slot, and you could probably do some unique stuff with Kenneth Gainwell. He did go 8 for 39 and get a touchdown, which I feel is game enough for Kenneth Gainwell, who seems to have been in the doghouse. Or it's like a Gainwell game, a Scott game, a Gainwell game, a Scott game. That I think that we're starting to see enough that Kenneth Gainwell should be more involved in the game. And he's definitely a way better pass catcher and can be way more effective in those seams in the middle of the field than any tight end we currently have on roster. So I also think it could be Kenneth Gainwell, but not to the extent of other people. But I think that he could also be important.
Yeah, and then what about leaning more on Sanders in the run game?
Well, yeah, 21 carries for 143 was a pretty heavy lead.
I think 143 is a career high for him. We know that that they can run the football. They're top two. They're the best offensive line in football. Top 3 running game, top 2 running game in the league. But my big question is, and I always say it, is you can't win a Super Bowl running the football. So you have to figure out a passing game, because teams will eventually, while we have AJ Brown and Devontae like on the outside, they'll eventually start putting 7-8 in the box and be like, we're going to force Jalen to beat us with his arm.
But I mean, at that point also, like, at this point, it's survival. It's get into the playoffs. And we clearly have shown that Dallas Goedert's vitally important to that passing game. Why not just you do what you got to do to get into the playoffs, and the passing game will come when you get one of your key guys who, like you said, he's definitely deserving of $50 million.
They're going to go up against better defenses. Tennessee's a better defense than Green Bay. You know, Jeffrey Simmons up front. Then they have the
Christian
Giants.
Fulton as corner.
Yeah, and then the Giants are, they have Kayvon Thibodeau. They have Dexter Lawrence, right? I think that's the Dexter Lawrence.
Yep. Up front, yep.
And Jalen Smith at linebacker and whatnot. So, like, they're going to be probably better than Green Bay. Then they have Dallas, and obviously we know what that, like, so you're going to be able to run the football, but you're not, and obviously I'm not saying they're going to run it to the extent of 300 yards a game, because it's not going to happen. This was such an outlier of running for 363 yards. Like, let's be real. It was a college type of game, because
a 7.4 yards per carry on 49 carries.
NFL
like, that's crazy.
Offenses don't run for 300 yards. This is college offenses do. So look, they're going to be able, they'll hand the ball off to Sanders. And we have to remember that Sanders isn't going to always bust one for 5-10 yards. He'll have ones where he tries to go to the outside too much and he'll get a yard, or he'll lose a yard. We have to remember, and we can't get impatient. We can't, Philly fans, like, we're rational.
And you know Shane Steichen, he doesn't bail on things that have worked so well for so long, does he?
Yeah. So, but you have to be able to keep defenses honest and be able to throw the football too. So, and look, we know that they're not going to be able to, you can't double team everybody. So if they're going to double team AJ Brown, Devontae should be open, or Quez should be open. So while we want to lean on the running game, especially like as we get towards the end of the year, and if they wrap up the division and potentially wrap up the number 1 seed, you still want to show that you can throw the ball. Look, Jalen has had 2 300-yard passing games this year, and then a bunch of games under 200 yards. So, like, his stats seem inflated a little bit, if that makes any sense. But we just need to see more consistency. And again, that big question comes: if this guy's going to make $45 to $50 million a year, can he throw the football? And that's the big question.
And it definitely is a big question, but I also think it's, can you work within the structure and the scheme that's there for you? And so far, he's proven that. But when it comes to the big time, the show time, when it comes to round one of the playoff, we remember our best memory, our most vivid memory of Jalen Hurts in a big, big game is still, I'm going back to that Tampa Bay game. That's the big game. That was the game. We were in the playoffs, and the whole team just shut down. It was a disgusting game. It was a disgusting effort overall. So my biggest concern is if he can go into a game in the playoffs, once we're in the playoffs and we start winning games and we win with the scheme we're working with, and whether that be 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing, however it is that we're winning, okay, that's fine with me. But when push comes to shove, when we get in that situation, when he's backed up against the wall and he needs to win a playoff game, the biggest games of his life to move to the next round, can you make a pass? Can that rush? Can you always make that rush if you need 3 yards? Can you always get 3 or more on it? Like, those are the situations that are going to come up with Jalen Hurts. And I understand it feels like, we're 10-1. We just won 40 to 33. He just did something that we asked him to do in the last episode. But at the end of the day, it's still the biggest games to me to shut me up and to shut LJ. I know to shut LJ up, it's going to be this. Get to the playoffs, win the games, move on within the playoffs. If he can start doing that to me right now, I don't care about, whatever each year the salary cap goes up, each year a quarterback becomes more expensive. I am not even remotely thinking $50 million a year for this guy right now. He is at a $40 million a year contract for me right now. Franchise quarterback, $40 million. You start winning playoff games, okay, you're starting to check boxes for me. $50 million is within the realm of possibility. I will not say $50 million. I wouldn't even consider it right now. If I was Howie, I'd be like Howie. I'd be saying, look what you're going to do for future years. You're not Patrick Mahomes. You're not Josh Allen. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure those types of conversations are happening. But to me, you start winning playoff games, I'll start talking $50 million. Until then, you're winning games. We're clearly on a path to the playoffs. I think 10-7 at this point in this NFC. If we completely collapsed, we'd still make the playoffs. But we got to get there. Once we're in the playoffs, show me what you got in those games.
I mean, I've always said that I want a home playoff game, so that means winning the division. Honestly, I mean, if we get the first seed, we get the first seed, I'd be happy. But
it's a game changer to play in the link. Look at Jair Alexander. Look at which we got to talk about those fake injuries. That is bogus, by the way. That is so bad. That was so fake. Like
it was a college thing to do. You saw there was the one play that two people looked over on the sideline and then dropped. Like, it was a college.
The NFL needs to do something about that because, like, and I get it. Inside 2 minutes, they charge you a timeout, but that's why they don't fake it inside the 2 minutes. So I definitely think that they definitely need to do something about those because that is just bad for business.
Has the QB turnstile ended in Philly?
Serdar, can Hurts beat good teams with his arm? That's the biggest question. We agree with you on that one. That's the biggest question. And me and you, if you're asking us to answer that question, we still haven't had it answered. So to me, you're asking the wrong show. There's other shows who will say
if you look at the Eagles' schedule, how many good teams are left on it? 2?
I mean, probably Tennessee, the divisional games, and you call one of them fraudulent. Like you call the Giants fraudulent.
Maybe Tennessee, and maybe not Dallas. So Dallas game's week 15, right? Because it's
Christmas
or
Eve.
week 16. So it's Dallas, the Saints, and it's Dallas.
Serdar just wants us to beat Dallas. Like
we did already, so shut up.
No, but they're gonna say it was Cooper Rush. I want Serdar. If we beat Dak Prescott, you better be on this show on that Tuesday, the 20. What is that gonna be?
27.
Let me pull it. The 27th. You better be on this show and ready to take a shellacking from us because I get it. We haven't beat Dak Prescott, but we beat Cooper Rush at his game.
Honestly,
we did the game. The game plan was perfect.
Can I tell you something though? Like in that game, that the Eagles could lose that game and still win the division. That would be the second loss. How many losses does Dallas have right now? 3. Dallas.
3.
So I think
if we win all the games leading up, we might have the division.
The Eagles can go 13-4. Dallas is going to go 12-5. Or that's what I think. Like that game might not mean as much as people think it's going to mean. But in going to has the QB turnstile ended in Philly? I don't know if we can answer that question yet. Because while Jalen is having an MVP year, we need to see him beat good teams.
I'm gonna say at this point it would take a massive fall off, but I think that Howie's gonna cough up some money, and I think theoretically it's the end of the turnstile, but we thought it was the end of the turnstile with Carson Wentz, and look what happened there. So theoretically, yes, but Howie builds his contracts in a way that, you know, he can get out from under these guys and teams are willing to take on the contracts because like Carson Wentz, 2 teams took on his damn contract. Like that's the type of thing. Like if he builds a contract well enough that by year 2 or year 3 into the contract, things aren't working out, he'll be able to move him off the books and somebody else will take on the contract just like Wentz did when he went to Indy, and then Indy did it when he went to Washington, and now he's unemployed again. So, you know, whatever.
I kind of think that the Eagles are in a point though right now that they're going to be forced to – I hate to use the word forced, but they're kind of going to be forced to sign Hurts. He's 24, going to finish top 3 in the MVP race, if not win the MVP. Potentially get the number 1 seed, probably win the division. Like, it's hard. And again, granted, they don't have to sign him after this year. Like, he has – and again, you don't want your franchise quarterback to go into a lame duck year. But, like, let's take a step back. The Eagles do not have to sign Hurts after this year. They just can. You can't sign him until after the third year.
But you see what past situations have created. It just creates a divide, an egotistical divide between team and quarterback. Hurts is
that type of guy, though? That he'll let that bother him?
Has he been put in a situation where the team didn't want to pay him the money, and now no, he's proven that not that guy. But when push comes to shove and he's put in that situation and there's $45 million on the table and he wants $50 million, and then he goes into that lame duck year, well, then it could be a completely different game.
I mean, we'll see. And obviously it all depends on how now through the end of the year goes. Like if he looks in the first playoff game, he looks like they look like in Tampa last year. There's still question marks.
And just for this playoffs, they'll play good teams. Jim, I'm just going to say check the NFC out. I think that the best
I think
teams.
the NFC is a little bit better than you think. A little bit better.
Maybe we didn't play San Fran, and San Fran's been really good. Outside of San Fran, I think the best teams are in the division.
San Francisco is the team I'm worried about the most in the NFC.
They are, and Minnesota I'm not as worried about. Yeah, it's San Francisco, it's Dallas, and then probably Minnesota. But I would probably actually put the Giants ahead of Minnesota because despite that we believe they're fraudulent, divisional matchups are killers. That can be.
We'll see with the Giants because we still have to face them twice. And I even though I do think Week 18 is not going to mean anything, I think Week 18 the Eagles won't be playing their starters because the game
it's what Week 14 is going to mean something. They're already thinking about flexing that game up, which it already should be flexed up. Just saying. There's no way the Broncos deserve to be in. I think it's the Broncos and Chiefs in primetime that night. Sorry, Jim is a major Chiefs fan. But there is no way you can tell me the Chiefs and the Broncos deserve to be that primetime game.
Wait till
you can find a better game
in the Super Bowl.
All right. What for you guys and Eagles fans, would you consider a win this season? Like Serdar said, win the division. If they win division and lose second week of playoffs, are fans upset, or has the team showed enough? Well,
it depends. Do they get a first round bye? Because if they get a first round bye and they lose the divisional playoff game, yes, that's bad. But if they don't get a first round bye, they play in wild card weekend, win that first game, and then go to the second game and lose that, I think that's a win. But I think
it's a win because we weren't even supposed to be here. We weren't even supposed to be talked about as like this likely Super Bowl favorite at the week 12 of the season. I know, as the season approached and moves continued to be made, people were moving us up our rankings and stuff. But I don't think anybody would. Me and you had Green Bay in the Super Bowl.
That's not happening.
I really don't think that. I think. First of all, the Philadelphia Eagles fans are going to be pissed off no matter what if it's not a Super Bowl. But I think at the end of the day, getting anywheres in the playoffs under your own power, like you said, if you get the bye and then you come into a game and you lose, that's no better than we were last season. We're in the same position. We just took advantage of one of the easiest schedules in the leagues. I'll admit it is. We can only play what's in front of us. But you take advantage of the schedule, you get the bye. In a year where the NFC isn't all that great, yes, San Francisco's better, but they're only, 2 games above 500, so they're still no better positionally than a lot of the other teams in the NFC. But if you go in there and all you do is get the bye and lose the next round, that's no better than last year. Same team, same position. We need to make it to that, at least that round before the Super Bowl. You got to make it to the championship game. And if we make the Super Bowl, both of those are wins, and both of those likely mean that Jalen Hurts is a $50 million a year man.
Yeah, so again, the circumstances matter. But also, and in terms of Jalen Hurts, if you say the Eagles are facing – who would they face? Say they're facing they wouldn't face Minnesota. I think Minnesota would have the 2 seed.
They could end up like Dallas.
Yeah. So
or
I don't want to use
New
Dallas
York Giants or
it could be a division game. But all right, let's say we're facing Seattle. And again, I don't know. But if it's a shootout, if you go out there and lose the game 38-35, and Jalen had a hell of a game, that's Jalen, I think, would deserve to be paid. So again, circumstances matter.
I think that the only thing is we have the last sour taste of that Tampa game, and you just have to prove your way, but you've improved, you've developed, and you're way better than that Tampa game. That to me is a win, as much as I know a lot of Eagles fans at this point, if we go in and we only lost 3 or 4 games, that it's Super Bowl or bust. To me, I don't necessarily feel it's Super Bowl or bust. We weren't necessarily supposed to be here. We have a lot more pieces in place than we thought. There's a lot of big decisions coming up in the offseason, and we're thinking ahead of ourselves. But to me, a win is anything that looks a lot better. So we can't debate it. It has to be a lot better than that Tampa Bay game last season.
They were down 30-0 in the third quarter.
The game was over. The game was over at halftime. So,
he looked bad.
As long as we shouldn't have to debate it or talk about it. We should just say this was a lot better.
Yeah. So, we'll we'll see what happens. There's plenty of time left. A couple big, like this week's game against Tennessee is big. While the Eagles are going to be favored, I know Tennessee lost to Cincinnati last week, but Cincinnati was able to hold Derrick Henry in check. And the Eagles haven't really been able to hold running backs in check lately. And again, while Green Bay only had like 104, 106 yards rushing, they average over 5 yards a carry. They just weren't able to run the ball. Tennessee will run the football at you. Mike Vrabel doesn't care. He will run it right down your throat. So the Eagles are going to have to be able to find a way to stop. And again, even if Jordan Davis is back, he's missed a month. We don't know what his stamina is going to be like, but pairing him with Linval Joseph and Dominican too. Fletcher Cox had the best game of the year this week. Sack, a couple tackles for losses. So like we need that Fletcher Cox, and he only played like 30 snaps. So the less snaps that guys like Fletcher Cox can play, I think that improves their game because they know they're not going to get as many opportunities to go out there and make a play. So hopefully
31 snaps, and he played 20 on the pass rush, 11 on the pass defense.
He was
or the rush defense.
The best game of the season for Fletcher Cox. That's what we want to see the rest of the year.
By far. And I mean, we should pivot to the defense. Great questions, great conversation, but we should pivot to the defense very quickly. And I by the way, Eagles are 5-point favorites this week. That's what I was looking for. I was trying to figure out where we were at. So we're 5-point favorites against Tennessee right now. Defensively, like you said, the big question mark comes with Reed Blankenship of, is Marcus Epps going to play as good with Reed Blankenship? But Reed Blankenship played well. He looked good. He can continue to look very good and very effective, like you said, this week, because Tennessee isn't that. We're only, 4 weeks removed from Tennessee receivers having no targets, no catches, no yards. So we have to remember that like you can still look extremely effective against this offense because they are not very good in the passing game, but it's all about what you're going to do against Derrick Henry and how effective you can be against that type of run and attack, that type of absolute beast. James Bradbury continues to be absolutely incredible. The guy's going to get a huge contract. I love James Bradbury to the end of the earth for what he's done for the Eagles this year. And it's such a shame that we're going to have to say goodbye to him. But he, based on age, based on situation, based on Darius Slay, you need to get younger at cornerback. You got to find a future franchise cornerback, and you can't just go from a 33-year-old to a 29-year-old, and that's your pivot. You need to probably consider it more in the draft, but can't deny that James Bradbury is still incredible. He's having a great season. Brandon Graham, also, I think you said his name as well. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, like hit the fountain of youth this past week with some really good games. Josh Sweat even had a decent game, but still way too inconsistent for my liking. Me and you've spoken about that at length. Like Josh Sweat needs to be consistent. He got money to be consistent. He hasn't been consistent, and it's been extremely frustrating to see him have a good game, disappear for 3, have a really good game, disappear for 2. Like he only has in the schedule 4 or 5 really good games that we can praise him for, and the rest we say, why did we give him this money? And so it could be a sign that we definitely have a major need, which we know there is on the other side of him at edge. But for now, he should be able to work with what's there, I think.
Will Anderson. The Saints need to keep losing. I want Will Anderson.
Well,
and then at the linebacker position.
Pray.
The linebacker, again, we talk about this a lot too. The linebacker started off really good. Now, TJ Edwards has been playing probably the best of the linebackers. But again, I'm going to ask, unleash Nakobe Dean. It's about that time.
We talked about that on Friday, and like Chris said, you don't really have to. But my thing is, like, he doesn't play special teams. He doesn't play. He very limited. Like he barely. You'd be lucky to see him play 10 snaps in a given night. We need to. The way I said it to Chris, because he was saying there's no reason to play him or whatever, or the idea that don't give people tape on him. He should be able to adapt his game. If people get tape on him and he's as good as they say, and he was supposed to be a first-round pick, it doesn't matter how much tape you give on him. He should be able to adapt to the game and get better at the game and be a better linebacker based on other teams and seeing his weaknesses and him seeing his own weaknesses. But to me, what's 10 snaps? What's 15 snaps? Is it going to make Kaiser White and TJ Edwards that much worse? At this point, no. I think you take 5 away from TJ Edwards because he's way more effective. You take 10 away from Kaiser White, give him 15 snaps, see what happens. And it doesn't matter where it is, pass rush plays, whether it's Russian defense plays. To me, it doesn't matter. I just want to see some defensive plays because we have 2 impending free agent linebackers. We need an answer. Is he the guy? Can he step up?
We have a lot of impending free agents on the defensive side.
17 total, but I think it's like 12 of them on defense.
The defense is going to look a lot different next year. It's going to look a lot different.
You hear what I'm saying? Like, we need to know, is he the guy? And at this point, if all you can say is, oh, he had a great offseason, he had a great training camp, he had a great preseason, we don't know. We've seen guys have great preseasons. Kevon Wallace was a guy, had a good camp, had a good preseason, and he has completely fallen flat for us. He's almost not even rosterable for us. So Dean should be better. Dean should be better. Theoretically, yes, the Dean should be better.
And again, I'll say what I've always said. Dean is probably a game player. He's a guy that just his instincts kick in the middle of a game. Something it's hard to show in practice.
Definitely. That's why I think 10, 15 snaps over the next, whatever it was, that we got 5-6 weeks left in the season. Let the guy play, and don't let it be just week 17 in that type of situation. Let the guy play leading up to it so we know we have our answer at linebacker. Because then if we know we have the answer, then we can easily let one of these 2 guys walk. But one of them has to walk anyways. It's, do we have his replacement right there? Or do we have a guy we assume is a replacement?
I think we do. I think Nakobe will be good. Just, again, I've been clamoring for it. We're more than halfway through the season. We just need to see what he has. All right. So the Eagles are 10-1, 40-33 win. Titans at home up next. Should be a good one. Before the Eagles go for 3 straight road games, starting with the Giants, then the Bears, and then the Christmas Eve clash in Dallas. Actually, technically Fort Worth, because, the other teams in the division don't play where their name says it. And that bothers me. The Fort Worth Cowboys, the New Jersey Giants, and the Maryland or Landover Commanders. The Eagles are the only team in the division that actually plays in the city that their name is after. That's something that's always bothered me, by the way. All right, let's move to the unheralded player of the week for week 12 in the National Football League. Who do you got, Connor? And hopefully you don't steal my guy.
Oh, no. I had him. Oh, I have Zay Jones.
Okay.
Zay Jones. I also was really heavily debating Samaje Perine, but I ended up going with Zay Jones. He went 11 for 145. He was huge in some of those final drives, or in some of those drives for Trevor Lawrence at the end of the game that ended up leading to the 2-point. Obviously, there was nothing to lose by Doug Peterson going for this. When I saw, I was like, what is he doing? And I was like, man, the team is 3-7. What do they have to lose? They're not making the playoffs. You might as well do it. They went for it. They got the 2-point conversion. They forced Justin Tucker to kick from 67. That field goal is probably good from 62 or 61. Like, his leg is unbelievable. It was an unbelievable football game. But Zay Jones was vitally important to Trevor Lawrence's 321 passing yards. Zay Jones was 145 of the receiving yards. So it shows how important he was in that game. Huge win for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, they're not there this year, but I think there's a chance that they could be there in future years. And the Ravens really needed that win because Cincinnati's going to make things tough, and that AFC is going to be a hell of a lot tougher to get in. You're not getting in as an 8-9 or 9-8 team like the NFC. Things could be a little more difficult than the AFC.
Defense is so bad. It's such a bad team. And you got, like, Jaguars love playing for Doug Peterson, and I guess it's a lot. It's easy to love playing for that guy compared to playing for.
We've said it, but we saw it for ourselves, and now we're seeing it with Nick Sirianni. If Nick Sirianni someday gets the boot, he's probably going to go somewhere, and people are going to love playing for him. They build cultures, and they just.
Yeah. All right, so my guy, and I'm pretty sure one of us picked him before. I'm going Mike White. 22 of 28, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns.
If we picked him last year.
I thought, was it last year? I thought maybe
it had to be because Joe Flacco played this year, and then Zach Wilson came back.
The Jets were able to win 31-10. Every team in the AFC East is also over 500, just like the NFC East, except all 4 teams in the NFC East are would make the playoffs if they started today.
Yeah, the rest in there, it's like what, 8-3, 7-4, 6-5, and 6-5, I think.
Something like that.
8-3, 7-4, 7-4, 6-5.
Yeah, and if Mike White would have started the 2 Patriots games, maybe the Jets would have won those games because Zach, and I never was a Zach Wilson fan when he came out. I couldn't stand Zach Wilson. I thought he was a little overrated. But yeah, so
his biggest comp, and people always sit there and they were like, "Oh no, there's no way." He was comped by so many really good draft people to Johnny Manziel, and he is Manziel, and he is proven to be so much like him. That's
not a good comp.
It was that comment. Everything went there. They said they were going to give him one more week. When he said, "Oh, you only scored 3 points. Do you take some responsibility for that loss, or do you, or whatever the question was?" And he said no. And then from there, he lost the entire locker room.
Yep. Yeah.
Because they wanted to give him one more week, and I think the backlash was so massive that they had to just. Yeah, they made the right choice in my eyes.
I don't think he's going to play again the rest of the year, but we'll see. That's a Jets.
Not if Mike White's playing like that.
Yeah. All right. So, Eagles 40-33 winners, 10-1. You went with Zay Jones, who I was also thinking him. I went with Mike White. We will be back this Friday earlier in the day, hopefully, to get you set for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tennessee Titans in what will probably be one of the toughest games of the year for the Eagles, especially with the type of offense that the Titans are going to run. Final thoughts, Connor?
I'm excited. I wish we had things wrapped up. But I mean, it feels really good to know that going forward, there's always going to be a playoff scenario or a chance to get in going forward. Like, that feels good that we're the first teams. It's us in Minnesota who get the first crack at being that team. Feels a lot better than having to wait till like week 15 or 16. And then it's like, oh, we have a chance. So it definitely feels good. And I saw things. I saw some really good things. I don't want to leave this on a negative note because there was some negativity, but I don't want to leave it on that way. The fact that when push came to shove, that offense was able to orchestrate 40 points after putting one more point on the board than Indy the week before was definitely a big step forward. So very happy with that.
Hopefully the offense continues to go forward. Granted, they're going to be facing much tougher defenses going forward. All right. Thank you again for joining us here on the Kelly Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. And follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. Thank you for everybody that commented in the comment section. We enjoyed the back and forth with everybody. Eagles 10-1. We'll see you Friday for the preview show of the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tennessee Titans. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut and another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.